Hey, my name is Jonathan Hadel and I make music as Pink Buddha. And a couple months ago, when the MPC Live II came out, I made this video, a Streetfighter style matchup between the Akai Force and the MPC Live. Some viewers pointed out that with the new Akai Force update, which just came out last week, and these massive changes, that I should probably do a round 2 of these Streetfighter battles. So here we are. I also did a couple other Streetfighter matchups between the Akai Force and the MPC-1 and the Akai Force and the Ableton Push, the Push number 2. So I'm going to redo those as well. Okay, so back to this rematch between the Akai Force and the MPC Live. If you missed the original one or just need a refresher, you can click on this link up here and watch it. We'll wait for you. Okay, you're back. Let's dive right in. So in this original matchup, there were 13 rounds, and these are the topics that we covered. Now, because in a lot of these rounds, I'm comparing physical hardware between the Force and the MPC Live, it doesn't make sense to redo those because nothing changed. So I'm going to focus here specifically on just a couple rounds. Round 4, the software, round 5, sampling, and round 7, the MIDI controls, because those ones were really changed by this new Force update. All right, at round 4, this is where things start to get kind of interesting. Here's what happened in the last matchup. Okay, this round is going to be about integration with the computer. And in this round, this is an immediate knockout. I mean, no wasted time. MPC Live completely takes out the Force, being that there is no computer software for the Force. Okay, let's stop here for a minute because something really big happened in this last Force update that, at least for me, was a huge improvement. For some of you, you may be like, that actually kind of sucks. In this new update, the Force now has the ability to transfer projects back and forth from Ableton. For me, this is a game changer because now I can start certain projects, rearrange them, do my mixing, processing, and all of that, get those down to a certain level, and then just export them to the Force for more of a performance-like situation. So to be able to use Ableton to make a finished product in there and then export that easily to the Force, not by like little individual stems and having to put it all back together, that is a total game changer for me. And I'm going to do a whole video on that. If I've already done it, you can click up here and watch it. But for some of you, you're probably like, oh great, another whole piece of software to buy. Whereas with the MPC Live, you just get that desktop software as part of the package. Now they do have a free version of Ableton. It's pretty weak though. You could buy the lower priced one, but that's still a whole other layer of expense on there. So for this round, I'm going to have to say that it was just a double knockout. Whereas before, the MPC Live completely demolished the Force, this new change brought it up kind of to the same level. So double knockout, no winner. Or do you get a 0 in that situation? What happens to a double knockout? Do you get, each one gets a point or 2 zeros? Regardless, it's a tie. All right, on to round 5, sampling. Now, in the last matchup between the two, the MPC Live won this round because of the way that you can do a lazy chop directly to pads. And in this last matchup, I bemoaned the fact that the Akai Force did not have that functionality. Considering that Akai made both pieces of software, you'd think it would be a very simple thing to do. But when the new Force update came out and they were showing what was changing in the video, that they had now introduced this lazy chop, I was like, oh my God, the Force is now completely on par with MPC Live. However, that turned out not to be the case. And I just made a video on it. If you missed it, you can watch it up here. I mean, they brought it up to the same level almost, but the biggest feature that I felt like was missing is when you do the lazy chop and as the sample's playing, you're hitting the pads to decide where you want them to go, you have to do that in sequential order. On the MPC Live, you can touch whatever pads you want to, and that's where it's going to put the chop. So even though the Akai Force made this big improvement and a lot of like hoopla about the fact that they now put this lazy chop into the force, it still falls short. So whereas in our last matchup, the MPC Live totally won that round, now this one was a close match. They were punching it out with each other. MPC Live still comes out ahead, but just barely. All right, moving on to round 7, MIDI. In the last Street Fighter matchup, here's what happened. This next round, we're going to talk about MIDI. And the MPC Live has got some huge strengths in this regard. And don't even get me started on the new updates to the software. It allows you to instantly recognize any gear that comes in and adjust all the routing for that. I mean, I really hope that this is something that's going to find a way onto the force. All right, let's stop right there for a second, because that's exactly what happened. In this new Force update, they included all those features in here so that there's MIDI mapping and connection and communication between all your MIDI devices. And even though the Force only has one MIDI out, now you have the ability to connect a USB hub to power these different devices, many of which do MIDI over USB anyways. So it kind of overcomes the fact that there's only one MIDI out here, where on the MPC Live there were 2 MIDI outs. The other major improvement in this new Force update is macros. And oh my God, they are still blowing my minds with the implications. And I'm going to do a whole video about that. If I've already made it, it's going to be up here. And I don't even want to get into too much in this particular video because it's just so huge. A quick summary is the fact that these knobs, the XY screen, and these pads can all be controlling different things, including MIDI. To be able to use a touchpad for that and turn a knob or use the XY, even the slider thing is now assignable to MIDI. This completely stole the win away from the MPC Live before, so the Force wins that round in the second matchup between the two. Okay, so that basically covers all the new elements that have come out with this new Force update in terms of how they match up with the MPC Live, except for maybe I'll just mention briefly about round number 8, the CV inputs. There are still more CV outputs on the MPC Live than the Force, except for if you happen to have a device which will take MIDI and turn it into CV. Which I do have, and I will do a video on that in the future. Again, when it comes out, it's going to be up here in this link. And so in that regard, round 8 kind of like is impacted by the changes to the Force in round and all these macros, which can be sending out MIDI signals. And if you have the right device to transfer that into CV inputs, that is a huge game changer, for me at least. But that requires more gear, so in this situation I'm not going to bring that really into this round because the MPC Live as a standalone unit still beats out the Force with regard to CV. That if you have this additional gear, the macros on the Force make that a huge win over the MPC Live. So once again, in this epic matchup between the Akai Force and the MPC Live, Akai Force wins again. This time even more soundly, 8-6. Depending on how you configure this score, it's either going to be 7-5. If there's no score for round 4, or if they both get a point, I'm just giving them both a point, so that makes it 8-6. I'm the ref here, so I make the rules. Wait, hold on, one more thing. If you're new to my channel and you are a new Force owner, or you are thinking about getting one and you haven't seen my Force Friday series yet, click up here and go to that playlist.